Hi, this is Pastor Jeff Short, and welcome to Christian Answers, my radio and television program that I talk about contemporary issues, try to bring a biblical worldview to the issue. And a few months ago, I put out a video on Paige Patterson, the Baptist leader, seminary leader, who was removed from his position as president of Southern Evangelical Baptist Seminary and in Texas because of some allegations that he improperly handled a rape victim's case in investigating that. He was also heard to say some disparaging words, and he also was accused of not taking seriously a woman who had an abusive husband, and so on and so forth. So there were some different charges against him. And what I said in that video a few months back, before the Southern Baptist Convention and before the annual meeting of the Southern Baptists, what I said was that Paige Patterson deserves to be heard and he deserves to lay out his case, and that I didn't agree with the way that the Southern Baptist Convention was handling this situation because it was relying a lot on newspaper reports and also pressure by women's groups within Southern Baptist Convention. And so what I objected to was the way Paige Patterson was dealt with based on the evangelical, quote, Me Too movement, where you have women, all of a sudden, you get all these women together and they start lobbying and pressuring to have men removed from positions based on somebody said this and somebody said that, and this political pressure, this feminist pressure brought to bear on a process that needs to take place really in a very judicial and evidence-based way. But it's not. It's actually being tried in the court of public opinion. So I criticize the whole process the Southern Baptists used in removing Paige Patterson. This man deserves to lay out his case, and he deserves to explain what he meant when he said something. For example, there was a case, an instance, where he is being accused of trying to cover up a rape accusation when he was a Baptist president of a seminary, not the one that he was released from recently, but the one before that, a seminary before that, he was the president. And there was a rape accusation, and in an email that was leaked to the press, of course, all of this is done in the press, and all of this is done in the media, and all of this court of a public opinion, he's being tried and sentenced in the media. But this was leaked to the press, and in the email it said that he wants to talk to her so that he can break her down. Now, this is an email. This isn't an official document. This is him communicating with someone else at the seminary, and he's talking about he wanted to speak with her to break her down. And all the women, this one women's group was really up in rage. Oh, he was trying to get her to deny that this happened, and he was acting unjustly and unfairly, and he was trying to bully this woman into not reporting, all blah, 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 blah. Wait a minute. You're talking about an email, an informal email, and talking about the way a person talks in an email. What did he mean by break her down? Was he talking about break the story down the way a person would on the witness stand, to see, to test, to validate, or to disconfirm or confirm the story? Break it down, break her down, break it down into bits and pieces so that he can understand what actually happened. It's a rush to judgment to say that we must interpret his words in this informal email as to mean that he was trying to bully this girl. See, this all comes out in court when you put these things together in court, and then there is a side to everything. So you have to listen to what Paige Patterson meant by the email, not by what some feminists today can spin and interpret an email to mean. So this is all basic courtroom procedure. That's why you have to have people in an orderly courtroom process when you want to get to the bottom of something, instead of rushing to judgment based on news clips and news reels and someone else's interpretation. You supposedly, in a courtroom situation, a person gets to have their day in court, which means out of the crowd, away from the mob, in a sane, orderly, quiet courtroom. All of the facts can be laid out. A charge can be explained or not explained. Witnesses are cross-examined, and you have an orderly process for telling the truth, okay? But what happened with the Southern Baptist Convention in respect to Paige Patterson, that it was a media circus. And the Southern Baptist Convention, in an effort to have a PR victory, virtue signaled and said, we're going to stand with the women. And so basically, Patterson's out. It doesn't matter really if he did it or not, or if he said it or not, or if he was acting irresponsibly or not. We're just going to get rid of him anyway because we want a virtue signal and show the world in a public relations move that we're with the women. We're with the women. Now, when you fast forward a few more months to the Willow Creek situation with Pastor Bill Hybels, you see the same virtue signaling coming from the evangelical community. You have these Christian leaders, and you have these the elders at the Willow Creek Community Church, and you have the newly appointed pastors lining up in virtue signaling to say to the world, we're with the women, we're with the women, we're with the women, in order to appear to be virtuous, in order to appear to be behind the Me Too movement. Don't want to be accused of being outside of the Me Too movement, because then you're a male chauvinist pig, and you're a bully, and you're a bigot, and you're a sexist, and you're for the patriarchy, and you're for the white male privilege, and all of the little terms that have come up in the last few years. You don't want to be accused of that, so you have the virtue signal. You have to stand in front of the crowd and say, we're with the women, we believe the women. Whatever the women say, we believe everything they say. We don't care what Hybels has to say. We don't care what his stories are. They're all lies anyway. We don't care. We're trying this whole situation in the court of public opinion. And that's what I have objected to in the last two videos that I wrote and I produced about this whole Willow Creek situation. I have been giving a cry for due process, and I have been giving a cry for innocent until proven guilty. So when I hear, for example, the elders of Willow Creek change their mind from they had investigated this, but now they changed their mind and they say, well, we believe the women and we have no reason to doubt the women. I ask myself in my mind, wait a minute, they have no reason to doubt the women? Yes, they actually do have reason to doubt the women. Why? Because the accusations are being made against their pastor, who, as far as they know, is an outstanding person and has a character, and they learn from him and have been taught the Bible from him, and he has been a role model for them for many decades. Yes, they have every reason to doubt accusations against his character. Now, that doesn't mean they don't listen to the accusations. The accusations should be listened to, but they shouldn't automatically be assumed true. And so that's the problem. I'm hearing from the Willow Creek board, now that they've stepped down or are stepping down, and I'm hearing from the former pastors who were appointed just this year. They stepped down also. I'm hearing that they believe the women, as if they want to affirm the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement teaches this, basically in a nutshell. There are women who have grievances against men. They accuse these men of specific charges. We're supposed to believe everything the women say. Why? Because they're women. They're the victims. The bad men are the perpetrators. And so we cannot believe the men, but we should always believe the women. That is not a sound principle. That is not a wise principle. That is not how the court of law works. You don't go into a court of law, and whenever the witness is a woman, you say, well, whatever your testimony is, we believe you because you're a woman and you've been a victim all your life, and all these men are bad people, and we have to believe you automatically, and we disbelieve the men whenever there's a difference between a man and a woman's opinion. That is not how justice is done in this country, or it should be done anywhere. Justice is done when you weigh the evidence. You let people give their story. The women of the Me Too movement should be allowed to give their story. They should be heard. They should be taken seriously, very seriously. The more serious the charge, the more seriously they should be taken, and more thorough investigation should be done. But you do not automatically say, I believe the woman. I saw on the internet, on blogs, I saw that the popular author Lee Strobel, he made a statement to the effect, I never in all my years and decades at Willow Creek ever saw anything like this as far as Bill Hybels was concerned, but I believe the women. In other words, I don't have all the facts. I haven't sifted and sorted and seen any of the evidence other than what is in the newspapers and on the internet and rumor this and that and the other. I don't know any of that, but I believe the women. That's called virtue signaling. That's getting in front of people and saying, I'm with you, Me Too movement, I'm with you. I don't care what the other evidence is, I'm with you because I don't want to be seen as against the Me Too movement. That's what that is. Then again, there was the blogger and theologian Scott McKnight, who teaches seminary in Chicago. And he too gets on the internet and says, the women are telling the truth. The women are telling the truth. Now, I don't know if he has access to all of the testimony and accusations, and has he seen these witnesses cross-examined? Has he heard Bill Hybels' point-by-point explanation for each of their accusations? I doubt it, and yet he gets on and says, the women are telling the truth. This is virtue signaling. And I see it in the evangelical world. We see it, for example, there's a pastor who got on the internet and presented a YouTube video on what we can learn from the fall of Bill Hybels, as if he knows all of the evidence. He has enough to base a solid and sound opinion on what actually happened. So he's already moving on. He already concludes that Bill Hybels is guilty of all the charges. And so what we can learn from the mistakes of Bill Hybels, as if he knew. We don't know. We need to let the evidence dictate our conclusions and not rush to judgment. So today I want to play a video clip of a woman, a lawyer, who really has a good word to share to the evangelical world about the Me Too movement and how we need to be careful and how we need to be wise in how we approach these topics, because we cannot just follow the world, we cannot just follow the Me Too movement and the currents that are out there, because we are going to be led astray. So let's watch this video clip from a lawyer, a feminist lawyer, who warns us against jumping on the Me Too movement bandwagon. And hopefully this will help evangelicals in the future when these things crop up once again. So let's roll that clip.
There's probably no one around at the moment that better describes my thoughts about the #MeToo movement and the cloud of mass hysteria that follows it than Janice Fiamengo. The following is excerpted from a panel discussion of more than 2 hours held on December 8th last year by the Canadian Association for Equality. The title of the discussion was #MeToo, Justice or Lynch Mob. Fiamengo pulls absolutely no punches, questioning the current witch hunt mentality of guilty by accusation, and asks what happened to women to make them so fragile when they conflate trivial claims of harassment with serious crimes.
Well, when I was trying to think how I should begin this talk, it occurred to me that the safe way to begin would be to affirm that I'm opposed to sexual assault and sexual harassment. Get that out of the way. But I actually feel that I can't say that because I don't know what the terms mean anymore. They've been stretched to such an extent by the plethora of self-proclaimed victims who've been coming forward of late. And I feel that I don't want to lend even momentary lip service to what seems to me a truly bizarre social trend that doesn't distinguish between the innocuous and the criminal. And I especially don't want to lend support to a movement symbolized for me in the Me Too hashtag, but it's been going on for much longer, for years now, that operates on the assumption that a man is likely guilty if a woman says that he is. We're at a remarkable moment in our history in which the contradictions of feminist ideology, rather than causing the movement to lose momentum, actually seem to be causing it to gain momentum, and in which contempt for men has become so normalized that sweeping condemnations of all men are now perfectly acceptable in our public discourse. The contradiction in feminist ideology that I'm thinking of that's most striking is the assertion that women are fully as capable as men to exercise their talents in the public sphere, and that anyone who says otherwise is exhibiting the rankest bigotry and the most vile misogyny. We have that on the one hand, that assertion, coupled with displays by women of the exact opposite of a Victorian-era fragility of epic proportions. Recently in Canadian politics, we have had a so-called sexual harassment scandal in which a Manitoba MP, James Bazan, had to undergo an investigation by the Chief Human Resources Officer for the Canadian House of Commons, had to complete sensitivity training, and had to apologize repeatedly, both privately and publicly, to the Quebec MP, Sherry Romanado. Romanado is the parliamentary secretary to the Veterans Affairs Minister in the Liberal government. What did James Bazan do that was so terrible? According to the reports I read, he made one or possibly two off-color jokes 7 months ago. At a May 2nd fundraiser for Canadian veterans and first responders that both Bazan and Romanado attended, the two MPs were posing for a picture with a third person, and Bazan joked inappropriately, "This isn't my idea of a threesome." According to Romanado, he may also have said something else about making a sandwich with someone in the middle, but I don't know whether that was sexual in any way. According to Romanado, who's still tearful about the incident 7 months later, the remark was, quote, unwanted, quote, inappropriate, and, quote, humiliating. And she told the House of Commons that the comments were sexual in nature and, quote, have caused me great stress and have negatively affected my work environment. She later commented that, quote, people are afraid to live what I've had to live through. I find it concerning that someone with governmental responsibility for a file as serious as Veterans Affairs would allow herself, even for an hour, not to mention 7 months, to be distracted by such a trivial matter. Are women really such delicate reeds, such psychologically fragile entities that a few words uttered in jest in a public place and then repeatedly apologized for could wreak such emotional havoc? And it seems they are. As the Romanado story was working its way through the headlines, another woman in the United States was coming forward to tell of her years-old trauma, this time in an article for The Atlantic magazine entitled, I Believe Franken's Accusers, it's Al Franken, of course, because he groped me too. This was published on December 6th. The author Tina Dupuis described how in 2009, at Barack Obama's presidential inauguration, she asked Democratic Senator Al Franken if she could have her picture taken with him. He agreed. They posed together, and that's when he groped her. Here's her description of the moment. Quote, "He immediately put his hand on my waist, grabbing a handful of flesh. I froze. Then he squeezed at least twice." The squeeze was so devastating, according to Dupuis, that her very personhood seemed to have been erased. She described the incident. "It shrunk me. It's like I was no longer a person, only ornamental. It said," this is still the squeeze, I guess, speaking, "You don't matter, and I do." Now, while it's true, of course, that not all the hashtag #MeToo allegations are this trivial, a fair number are. And it is astonishing that they should be allowed to take up so much public space and attention. Even more concerning is that the vast majority of these claims, serious and trivial, are merely allegations, not proven in any court of law. And this crucial fact seems easily forgotten at times of public reckoning, such as we're currently experiencing, when every day seems to bring fresh denunciations, more women coming forward, more men publicly called out, more affirmations of outrage, more abject apologies by men and promises to do better, and even more determined declarations that something is going to be done about it. This is surely a phenomenon of mass hysteria in which thousands of women claim to have been sexually terrorized by a range of behaviors that include lewd remarks, jokes, compliments, requests for dates, expressions of sexual interest, or fully clothed physical contact in public spaces. Even more startling is the number of people, men and women both, perfectly willing to punish accused men on a woman's say-so, even if it means sacrificing all the safeguards of a decent society, including the presumption of innocence, commitment to due process, the rule of law, and so on. This is a terrifying outcome, clearly related to decades of feminist theorizing, insisting that men are guilty if women say they are. On that basis, presumably, it is right to publicly shame men, to publish their names, to socially isolate them, to call them monsters, to drum them out of an industry, to pressure businesses to fire them, to circulate their names on databases of bad men, to publicize in detail allegations that haven't been investigated by police or prosecuted in a court of law, to create extrajudicial tribunals, to hear charges against them and to determine actions to be taken, and so on. An article in Vox magazine, this is just one example, by someone named Alex Press, stated it very well in the article's title. It's time to weaponize the whisper network. It sounds pretty scary, but the author was fully in favor. She wants mechanisms in place to encourage even more women to speak out publicly and to guarantee that, quote, the accused, not the accuser, will suffer when a case goes public. Only a woman confident that she will never be among the accused could be so enthusiastic about equating guilt with a public claim. This author also wanted to create, quote, a more formal body that compiles allegations, verifies their validity, and acts on that information. There's no recognition in the article of how difficult it is to verify allegations. It's taken centuries of jurisprudence to refine our procedures for that kind of verification, and still innocent people, mostly innocent men, are regularly convicted and punished. No matter, this author wants some kind of community body to attempt to do just that, more expeditiously, one imagines, and with more overt protections for the female victim than our court system currently offers. There are many countries in the world where community justice is still a primary mode of dealing with a range of perceived offenses or social problems, where accused persons are surrounded in the street, denounced, heckled, even beaten and killed. No one is seriously recommending yet, I don't think, physical violence in cases of male sexual predation of women. But we are talking quite openly and with few reservations about the character assassination of accused men, about making it impossible for accused individuals to pursue their livelihoods or maintain their reputations, all while the pillars of our community stand by and applaud the angry mob. We can pretend it's a higher form of justice, but it's the same old brutal scapegoating mechanism our ancestors sought to abolish. Thanks. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is even relevant at this point, but yeah, we do tend to, when we're talking about these things, to focus in on the most egregious cases of sexual violence. And of course, the thing that has worried me so much is the way that sexual violence as a category seems to be expanding, so that it seems to refer to nearly anything. It can refer to a crude joke or a sexual proposition or a calendar up in somebody's office or whatever. And it's one of the things that I find most astounding about the current moment is the degree to which it seems that women are becoming ever more incapable of dealing with the give and take of human interaction. And I mean, this is just sort of a question for others. I don't see very much discrimination in the public conversation about what counts as sexual violence. It seems that almost nothing is too minor to be included in the list of outrages. And there have been numerous articles recently published, including in the New York Times by a woman, a horrible accusation against all men. It was called, "Dear Men, It's You Too." It was just awful. It was unbelievable. And you could never imagine a man writing anything even close to it and it being published in any newspaper anywhere. And this is from a professor of English and creative writing. It seethed with hatred. It was absolutely, I couldn't imagine. This is somebody who teaches, presumably, some young men at Purdue University. I would never want to be a young man in this woman's class. Just so awful. And I've come across many others like this, blanket accusations against every single man. And, and she listed all these things that, women suffer. And some of them, were rape and things like that. But then there are other things that, forget, some man making a joke at the water cooler and other men laughing at it, that kind of thing. And I just wonder, I just find it bizarre, like absurd. And I don't know how all of the armies of the outraged, how they can keep on feeling so aggrieved and so upset about these things that are so obviously trivial. So I guess my question to other women in the room is, are these conversations going on in feminist circles? Because I would love to hear a feminist come forward. I don't see any of them saying half of this stuff is just ludicrous. It's not worth worrying about. This is the give and take. This is part of being human. Yeah, sometimes men say things that women take the wrong way, and it's not the end of the world. And yet we're all supposed to share in a kind of universal outrage that it's all deeply hurtful, and women have to stretch out with their smelling salts, and everybody has to run around going, oh no, this. What happened to the feminism of female empowerment, women taking responsibility for their own bodies, their own choices, their own responses to things, and just being able to soldier on, because it seems to have been entirely abandoned.